I wanted to go over with you some of the federal required requirements for transit and some of the common findings that we've had lately. Um, Oftentimes, people may tend to think of federal guidance and guidelines as being onerous and a lot of work. I believe that most of the rules, if you look at the rules, uh, provide for a fair, open, and equitable distribution of funding for the public. So if you're operating a service for the general public, then you should have a fair, open, and equitable way of distributing those funds and services to the public. So I'm going to share with you my slide presentation and we can go over it. Let's see. Yeah. So FTA has several reviews. Well, actually, two that I'm aware of. They have a triennial review, which would be a review for the 5307 program. Those are the large urban programs in which they will come out and review the compliance documents for operating transit as recipients of as direct recipients of federal funds. The other review is the state management review, and that's when they come and review GDOT or any other state. And as a pass-through agency, you are we're held to the same level of scrutiny as the subrecipient. So the information you have is what will reflect on GDOT's ability to oversee and maintain those services. So I wanted to go with you quickly. Well, I'll try to make it quick. Some of the common deficiencies. This information came from an FTA website. It was the most current I could find. But as Troy mentioned in his presentation, procurement remains the large item. That's always been a problem area for most federal recipients, be it 5307 or 5311 or even inner city bus. Procurement is the number one issue, and there are a lot of different clauses and things you have to do. I will talk about procurement later on this morning, as well as I'll go over DBE. But I wanted to run through real quick some of the other areas that are part of the compliance review. You have technical capacity, and that is making sure that you're able to prepare the grant, prepare the quarterly reports, prepare the updates for the services that you're providing, and to technically provide all the documentation that is required as a federal fund recipient. Drug-Free Workplace Act, that is where you have to provide information for employees. You can do it, oftentimes it's done through the break room, and you can put up posters and let people know where they can get help, where they can get treatment and services, well, for drug related illnesses or problems. Capacity and oversight, I kind of touched on that. Management and oversight. Oh, that is if you have a subcontractor that's providing the service, then we want to make sure that you are uh, overseeing that subcontractor for the areas of compliance that we're going to also hold you accountable to. Transit asset management, that is an inventory of the vehicles that we have purchased. If we, well, basically we're looking at miles and years, and we want to make sure that the vehicles are being maintained according to their purpose, that you're not using the vehicles for other type of services and other areas, and that it's being replaced, and that you're also planning to replace them. So we're going to also look at some of your planning options there. EEO is equal opportunity. We want to make sure that the programs that you provide are available and open, fair, and distributed accordingly. Drug and alcohol, that's where we're going to review not only your testing centers, but we're also going to look at your MRO and also the testing results. And we're looking for safety sensitive employees. We're not looking at everyone that's employed with your organization, but only those safety sensitive employees, which would be your mechanics, your drivers, your dispatch. Dispatch is also considered a safety sensitive position. And those they have testing requirements and it's oh gosh. I forget the exact count at this moment, but there are some testing requirements and the number of tests that you have to perform based on the total employee safety sensitive count. So we'll be looking at that. Satisfactory continual and control. That is basically looking at, because I often get it confused with technical assistance. Um, oh, that is making sure that the vehicles are moving, that you're managing the program well, and that the funds that have been used for the actual vehicles are meeting the needs of the vehicle. And some of those areas would include loss prevention, inventory control, uh, how you're disposing of the vehicles. I mean, there's a new requirement that anything above 5,000 has to be returned to FTA. So we want to make sure that we get them back their money, and that's from the salvage value. Want to make sure that you're looking at the warranty and that you're adhering to the warranty of the vehicles. That you're maintaining them also, but when there are opportunities to prepare, perform, or repair vehicles, that you are adhering to the warranty for the new vehicle. And let's see, maintenance. I touched on that pretty much with satisfactory, continuing control. ADA, I'm going to get into right now, but we're making sure that the disabled community have access to transit, and that the services are provided. Title VI is the Civil Rights Act. So we're going to make sure that you are displaying your notices, that your service is provided to everyone in the general public, and that it's an equitable, uh, reasonable approach to providing service and making others aware of it. Legal, I skipped over legal, but legal is the entity definition. We're going to look and see, because I know many of you may think that only cities and counties and other governmental agencies can apply for federal funds, but that's not exactly correct. There are other operators that have a presence but are not a publicly, well, they have to become somewhat public in order to receive federal funds. So we'll check on that. We'll look and see if there are any legal proceedings ongoing or in the past, if there are any matters of dispute. We will check on that. 5310 is more planning. 5311 is the federal, is the rural service program. And I think that's it for that slide. So some of the common ones, and this is 2021, but I noticed in the uh, compliance reviews we've just completed this year, these were some of the common ones that I found, and I wanted to make sure to discuss it. Um, I probably could have done it under another subject, but I just wanted to quickly go over some of that. Um, in ADA, we want to, one of the findings we found was that it does not, the advertising of information is not readily available. There were situations where the information was not relayed in the writer's guide. There was no public display, and also, and the website. That was the other one. The website. There were limited information on the policies and practices of the ADA Act, and also when you're looking at the act, and many subrecipients had a reasonable modification plan, but we want to make sure that those suggestions are put forth in the public and it's available for the public to review. Well, okay. Oh, and the complaint process. So in your plan, you need to have a complaint form, and in various if you're in an LEP area, then it should be in English and Spanish, but I'll cover that under Title VI. But you want to make sure that you have your forms available and that you have a process, and that the process includes an appeal if there's any finding or complaint. I've talked about the advertising, the insufficient advertising. Oh, the no-show policy. Yeah. No-show policy. Oftentimes, actually, I didn't see much of it with the current compliance reviews that we've just finished, but it should be fair. And if you have a passenger that takes the bus to work, let's say to work, 5 days a week, there, 2 trips, round trips, a no-show account should not should not be compared with someone who is an infrequent rider of your service. So we want to make sure that it is fair across the board. Again, getting back to the general rule of the federal program, everything should be open, fair, and equitable. Those 3 items. There were some descriptions in some of the ADA materials that only stated dogs. That's not appropriate. It's not correct. Some service animals are could be other type of animals. So the law states that we should just say service animals and not name any particular type. Also, on that, mentioning service animals, you cannot put any restrictions on the dog has to be muzzled or any cage situation. So you want to make sure that it's open, and we'll review that in the compliance review. Yeah, so that's it for ADA. Are there any questions before I move to the next one? Scrolling up and down. Any comments? Okay. Over here. Okay, reasonable no shows, suspension. Yeah, I'm trying to see what else I wanted to talk about here. As I mentioned, the no-show policy has to take into account the frequency of the trip. So you're not going to use a casual or an infrequent rider. You're not going to measure those no-shows or the percentage of those no-shows as you would someone who is a daily rider of your service. It has to be fair. The suspension cannot be excessive, and FTA considers anything over 30 days suspension to be excessive. Let's see, you cannot include no-shows. You cannot count as no-shows anything outside the rider's control. A tornado, the bridge fell, or a tree, uh, any act of nature cannot be counted as a no-show against the passenger. You have to have an appeal process, and the appeal process must be in writing, and it must clearly indicate the number of days a response is expected. You should have named persons or titles who is to review and who will make the decision. I think that's about it on that one. Another area that I came across quite frequently is what to include on our websites. So you make your service available. There were some subrecipients that had no presence on the internet. I was a little shocked to see that, but there were a few. So if you're going to advertise on the internet, you should provide your service. A detail of what your service includes, and a route map would be appropriate. Hours of service would be appropriate. Fares would be appropriate. But there were other items that should be included as well. You should include your ADA information, your complaint process, ways to make a reasonable modification. And by the way, reasonable modification is that if your your wheelchair is of a certain size or capacity or door, how would we accommodate making that service available to that passenger? And it could be other forms of equipment other than a wheelchair. It could be a respirator, or I am not familiar with them particular, but if there's anything that needs to be adjusted, how would we make reasonable modifications to that? And also, you should consider other alternate formats. Braille is good. TTY, I think that's it. TTY, teletype. Communications available. Title VI is another area that should be included on your website. You should have a notice available to the public. Title VI notices are most important, and I personally like to see them available in all the public spaces, the common areas. If you have a facility, if you have a bus terminal or a major gathering where the buses will be, you should have a notice available to the public for your Title VI information. The Title VI form will also they say a complaint form on the website, but a link to the form would be acceptable. And any other vital documents. EEO is another element that should be included on your job postings. We found a lot of that this year. There were a few. It's on the website, but it would be helpful if it's also placed if you have a listing of available jobs for your organization. And procurement. If you're going to do a procurement solicitation, then you should also name out the protest procedures on that, how to protest in the area of procurement. And I'll talk about that next. I think I think that's all I have. Are there any questions? Would anyone like me to go back over anything or talk about other aspects of compliance? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands, but if anyone want to speak up, that'll be fine.